And welcome back to the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we are leaking women from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and how we can get women found. And one of the most important parts in any woman's career is recognize that you're not just an employee. This isn't just a job, it's an adventure, right? And part of that adventure is getting involved in your professional associations and your industry associations. And for that reason, I am so excited about our next guest, who is an immediate, well, I don't know how many immediate, a past president of I think it's the largest water association now, Water Environment Federation. And so if you're looking at the water utilities side of water, because we deal with conservation and all this other habitat, everything else. On the water utility side, you got kind of Water Association on the more on the drinking water side, and Water Environment Federation a little more on the clean water, water quality, stormwater, etc. side. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay. So Jackie Jarrell was president of WEF, and in fact, she started her presidency in the fall of 2019, which meant that she had a very interesting presidency that included COVID, included the worst of the lockdown, it included George Floyd, and it included a lot of things came up during her presidency, and so she really had to lead this organization through all of that. So Jackie, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you.
So, one of the things I am asking all of the women on our program, and this is about 50 women. It's an all-women program
Wow.
with one trans man. Actually, I couldn't find a single lesbian or gay or queer woman willing to speak. And so Erin Copeland's going to be speaking. We actually eventually did find a woman who just happens to be queer, but so it is basically an all women program. So how did you get into water? What was your career path? Did you take time off? How did you, why are you where you are? Any challenges along the way? Go ahead and give us the skinny.
So my background is I went to college for I'm engineering and really civil environmental engineering. Really when I was in college, I had no idea that I would end up in water. I think, most people don't expect that they're going to just go into water because there's a lot of different choices and careers that you can go into. And I just wasn't something I thought about. But while I was in school, I did have, and I didn't really realize it, I don't think at the time, some mentors there. There was a female professor I had that taught the environmental lab and the classes and everything. And that person became a role model for me and someone that caused me to have some interest in that. In addition to that, there were other people that apparently when they came, so the city of Charlotte had a job fair that they brought out to the university. And so I interviewed with someone at that time on campus. And that could have been for any kind of engineering position, but it ended up, so I went on to do some other work for a little while. And the city contacted me and they said, we have this position at the utility department, and we were wondering if you'd be interested in interviewing for it. And apparently this woman in HR, when she met me, had before felt like I might be someone that they needed in the utility, kind of to give some different perspective back at that time. And so I ended up going to work for the utility, and I started out, doing a lot of engineering, planning, hydraulic modeling, sewer flow modeling, things like that. And as I was progressing through my career, I was very fortunate to have people that encouraged being involved in professional associations, and also being involved at work and in the community at work. So that's one thing I can say about Charlotte Water, that I think it's always been a place where people felt like, there were people there to support you, mentor you, and help you think about what we were doing as a service to the community, and how we could expand our learning and development. So I always felt supported that way. And so
And
I got,
are you
yeah.
from Charlotte? May I ask, are you from the Charlotte area?
No. So I grew up in New Jersey. My parents are from Columbia, South
Okay.
America, both my parents. And I was the first one to go to college. My parents were both blue collar. And so, the whole thing of even going to college was a whole learning experience at the time. Yeah, so I came to North Carolina to go to college, and then I ended up staying. And I love North Carolina. I love New Jersey too. But yeah,
I should. I was like,
I went to UNC. I went to
side.
UNC Charlotte, and
Oh, excellent.
so
Excellent. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
so
that
I
was
stayed in Charlotte. So after all that, and I started working, I started getting involved in first AWWA actually, because a lot of the work I was doing was on the drinking water side. And I was involved in the North Carolina organization, which is a joint organization between it's AWWA and WEF. So it was the North Carolina AWWA. We're now called North Carolina Water.
and by the way, folks, that's very common and at the state level. We talked about it. It's very,
it actually isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
North Carolina is a little bit unique. There, I know Arizona, Alaska, and also Atlantic Canada all are joint organizations.
Yeah, Chesapeake area here, and I actually went to NC State and Chapel Hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, also
Yeah, my daughter is at NC State, and my son went to Chapel Hill. And my son's in water, he's a marine biologist. My daughter is going to work in the water business, so I'm very excited. She's in chemical engineering. So yeah, so it's fun to see that.
A PhD, I'm still ABD, anybody but Duke.
Oh, so I guess the game last what was it, Saturday or whatever day it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just I got very involved in our state organization. I was the chair of the North Carolina organization, and then people started encouraging me to participate on the national level. And I had, as a board member in North Carolina, you're a member of both AWWA and WEF, the Water Environment Federation. And so anyway, I started getting involved on the Water Environment Federation side. A lot of it had to do with what I was doing in my job, again, because I had worked in industrial pretreatment. Over time, my career and my job at Charlotte Water changed. So even though I was not changing to a different company or something like that, I was actually moving to different areas of the utility and learning about completely different things.
It's really easy to do that in a water career. That
yes.
I mean, I actually started out more on the water resources planning, river basin scale, watershed scale, but because I was also doing groundwater and got into ASR, aquifer storage recovery. In fact, I worked for North Carolina Division of Water Resources on figuring out how to permit the very first ASR project in Greenville in the state.
Wow.
And we had the water resources people saying, this is really cool. It's going to prevent saltwater intrusion and restore water levels. And the drinking water, the water quality people saying, oh no, we got this underground injection control law, and all water goes down a well as a disposal. We can't have that in our state. And it's like you have this water resources versus water quality battle sometimes, and and so it is very possible that you may find yourself going from one silo to the next, from the AWRA to the AWWA to the WEF to the whatever, right?
Right, exactly. And you do, and there's a lot, it's all connected, right? So you learn that over time too, and you see that. And I was very grateful that our state organization was a joint because, and I didn't even realize it would be any different anywhere else. And I think it is important because it is completely connected. You think about your water supply, there are, you have sources upstream of you that are discharging their effluent, their treated effluent that's going into someone else's water source and being treated for drinking water. And it's that cycle, that you think about, and how we're all connected. So we really need to understand that. It's really, really important. And that's something that is a philosophy at Charlotte Water now, is we're one water strong. And that includes stormwater as well. And so that's new for us. But again, very important to kind of think about it, even from a regulatory standpoint, like you're talking about. Really, really important to understand that we're all working towards the same purpose, right? To protect public health and the environment. And so each piece matters, every single part of it.
And so we'll get to, from there going into the, the race to the presidency and that sort of thing. But within your workplace, so right now you have a female GM where you are, the head of the director. Angela is freaking phenomenal. I was hoping we could also talk to her for this. She's got to get this Wanda Sykes, no hold barred vibe to her. She just tells it like it is. I love hearing her speak as well. So were you always, as you were working your way up, was it mostly working with men? Did it change when you had a woman GM? How did that?
Yeah, so I did mostly work with men. I always had a male manager, as a boss. Really, Angela's really the first woman boss that I have, or manager. I had some phenomenal men that were mentors. I also had some other experiences that weren't so as pleasant sometimes, or a little bit more challenging. I will say having a female as a leader of our department is awesome. Like it's refreshing, especially someone like Angela, who is so caring about the community and the people in our community, and really understands the water sector. She understands the importance of what we do and providing exceptional service to the people that are here in our community. And so that care and everything just kind of comes through, and it filters through to all of us. And so I think that's really important. Her and I worked together for a long time in our areas that we were working in. She was in distribution collection. I was working at the treatment plants, so we were both working in operations for many, many years. And we also had a wonderful mentor, a male, that was the director when I first came to work. And we're actually there. We're building a new water resource recovery facility that we're naming after him, Josie Stowe Jr. And he was ahead of his time when it came to thinking about having a diverse workforce, and honoring that, and understand, and having a diverse management staff, and bringing other perspectives. And so he instilled that, I think, into us as well, and for us to understand that. And but Angela is definitely someone who's dedicated to that. And so that's such a great support for someone like me, because everyone has their experiences they go through in their careers, as a female, being in a more male dominated area. And it's kind of like, when you think about, it's hard for someone else to know how you feel sometimes when they're not like you, right? So being able to share my perspectives as part of the perspectives that we collect together is important, I think. And same for other people in our organization. Like all those perspectives are important. It doesn't matter if you're a white man, a woman, a person of color, LGBTQ plus, whatever it is, every perspective is part of us understanding our community. So I think that's something that's becoming more and more, the people are understanding more and more now. Why that's so important.
And you really were played a critical role in at least opening the door to that with Water Environment Federation, and a lot of that was around what was happening with women, with people of color, with the Black community after George Floyd and COVID. Because COVID, in those first few months of COVID, it was like, hey, African Americans and Hispanics are dying at higher rates and they're getting more sick. Oh, well, this must be just a disease for them. It's not going to impact us in the, in the little white communities out in the rest of the country. It took a while to go from the big population centers, right. out to the rest of the country. And there was sort of that lag. And I kind of got the sense, and we were actually doing a water and COVID-19 summit in those first few months. And I was talking to a lot of people, in the associations, in different organizations about water, including things like how are we protecting our staff when the essentially all the stuff came out about the essential workers and who was staying at home and who was an essential worker. And the people were going out and fixing the pipes that were breaking during COVID in those first few months before we had vaccinations and knew much about the disease, other than the people could die really, really quickly, were Black and brown.
Right. Yes, that's right. And it was a very difficult time because, if you think about it, at first, like you said, we didn't know anything about COVID. We didn't know what was safe, what wasn't safe. And we had to still continue to provide services to the community. And we had to make some decisions about how we did that and how we protected the workforce. And yes, it was predominantly people of color. And so you think about that and thinking about, there were people that were able to work remotely, and then the people that had to be there every single day and get out, and they had to be in the trucks together and working together. And it was scary. And they have families that they're going home to. So just thinking about that and making sure they had what they needed. We made our own hand sanitizer. We made kits for the trucks. We did all kinds of, we did special meal programs for the people that had to come in so that they could take a meal home to their family. We did lots of things to show that we cared about them, and we recognized that they were doing a hard job, and it was a risky job, because we didn't know. Right. And so that was a lot on my mind when I was president of WEF, because, I was thinking about all of those staff that are coming in, operators, technicians, all of those people coming in. So that was one of the things that was important to me during that time. And I did a lot of videos because we couldn't be in person. So I would do videos and talk about recognizing our staff and our operators in whatever communities. And, WEF did a lot to look at the science, and, they hired our chief medical officer to and they did a blue ribbon study. There was just a lot that WEF was trying to do to stay on that cutting edge of understanding what was happening and how we could, even the surveillance monitoring. All of those
very
things.
early on, wastewater was seen as one of those indicators of where a COVID hotspot was developing. You could see it in the wastewater. Right.
But understanding what that meant, like, does that mean it could be transferred that way or not? And, we learned a lot about it and that went back to the whole thing about keeping our workforce safe, because they're there working. But we learned that if they were wearing their personal protective equipment as required for a specific job task, they were going to be safe. But still helping people understand that hard. Yeah.
And because society wide, and it happened that those first few months I was on Capitol Hill when COVID hit, and kind of far almost east of the river. And there was a lot of white flight and a lot of people leaving, and a lot of people who came to DC and had, for an internship or a job or whatever, had families they could go to. So the people who were left, there was a lot of concerns that, oh my God, we've got this curfew and people are going to get locked up, and the tension level was rising. And meantime, I had friends back here back in North Carolina, where I'd gone to school, who offered me an opportunity to come dog sit, because they were going to go somewhere else, and said, come stay at our place, watch our dog. I moved out of my place on the hill, and I was actually moved to North Carolina right as we're trying to get all this stuff ready before they leave, for me, because it was kind of remote and I didn't have a car, and I'm down there and everything's closed because of the George Floyd demonstrations and riots, really, that there was, that everything was closing up. And just thinking about what were the things that led up to that. It wasn't just another video online or another story that broke. You add to that 3 months of lockdown, 3 months of people in Black and brown communities trying to say, hey, this is impacting us, and it's impacting it. A lot of the reasons, and right before COVID had come out, right, the water access gap report had come out, that people without water and sanitation were often in places that are, that race is a high indicator. And so you add to that, the stress is already being felt by the Black community, and then you add George Floyd on top of that. So it wasn't just a police brutality thing. I think it was also a, what are we going to do about the fact that we're dying at higher rates, that we're getting sick at higher rates? And part of that is around environmental issues and lack of water and sanitation, for the basic things of washing your hands and keeping things sanitized. And if you don't have good water at home, or if you're spending your food stamps to buy bottled water because you're concerned that the plant's going to shut down because people get sick, and we saw
maintain the infrastructure.
Plants.
It really is like a whole bunch of different things all at one time. And I do agree that all of what happened then, there was a lot of built up anger and frustration, and it just kind of was like the last, it was like this last straw that was like, okay, this is enough is enough. Because there had really been the three, right? I mean, there was George, but there were two before. And so that was one thing too with WEF, that we felt like it was really important for us to make a statement and say what we, that we don't believe in that. We had to make that statement. We felt, and normally the Water Environment Federation is not going to make like a political statement. But this wasn't really a political statement. It was more of all people are important. All people. And this is intolerable. It's not acceptable. And we have to change. And WEF is going to do what we can to make a difference and change. And I think that those, it was actually, we should have been all saying that long before it got to that, right? But it was a real wake up call. It really was.
And I know that we don't have quite as much time as we'd like to today, because we and I'm so glad that we were able to fit you in, but I want to make sure we're gonna. But they had a series of the podcast that is published by WEF. It's called Words on Water. They had two fantastic programs, and Jackie is in one of them, talking specifically about people's experiences around race in their careers. The first one, Kathy Bailey from Cincinnati, Randy Heyman from Philadelphia, and now I'm going to blank on who the third was. That it wasn't just what we usually hear at the associations, which is celebrations and success stories. And I've been in associations for a long time. Like I said, fantastic way to develop your career, to get speaking opportunities, to get leadership opportunities you may not get in your particular organization that you can volunteer to set up a panel or set up a conference or what have you. And it is a great way to get seen, to develop new skills. Fantastic. And when it comes to these issues, historically, often people don't want to talk about the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we can have Blackwater professionals, a women, luncheon or whatever, but it's got to be just networking. Don't talk about statistics. Don't talk about stuff that might upset somebody. I mean, I've actually been told that in diversity committees before. We can't do studies. We can only do success stories.
Yeah, I think we do have to, I think it is important for people to share their stories. And it's really just meeting people like we hear, meeting people where they are and helping them. So, I mean, because if you think about it, like I said, everyone's important, no matter what your background is, where you came from, whatever. And all of those different stories and different experiences people have had add to the value of understanding how we can better serve. It just all goes to that, because you think about that, that's what the community looks like, right? You think about whatever community you're in, what the demographics of that community is, what the culture of that community is, how people receive services, how there's some people that are afraid to ask for things because they don't really want to be visible. How do you help people like that? And unless you understand those cultures and get those perspectives from people you work with, or even in an organization, understanding that, you're not going to probably come up with the ideas that are really going to work as well.
Right.
And you think about these organizations, we need young people in our organizations, lots of young people. We need to bring lots more young people in. A lot of us are, getting near the latter part of our careers and have been active, but we should be bringing in other young people who bring another perspective, who are looking towards the future of where we need to go. And when they are in making them feel a part of, we talk about inviting people to the table. Yes, inviting them, but also including them, letting them lead, letting them be an active, big part of whatever it is really including that perspective. It's not just, we're going to invite this young professional to be in this group. They need to be an active part of it. And we need to make sure we do that,
and like you said, this idea that all people matter. There has been a huge push for young people. And now some of those young people, the millennials, are turning 40 now. And so now they were kind of pushed to go help the next generation. Right. And that has been, this is one of the major themes of this entire summit, 50 women and one trans man, is this idea that, women may have different career paths at different times and may have stepped out and want to come back in. And often, there's, say, a lower cost registration or special scholarships or special programs for young people, but not for career reentry.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's those kind of things, or helping. We were talking about this actually, is like helping to bring maybe non-traditional speakers to different organizations. So you're getting a different perspective from that aspect too. But that is a good point, because there's a lot of people changing careers, and how do we invite them and include them and make them feel welcome in the water sector, because they are bringing a value. They are bringing a value. I think that it sometimes can feel overwhelming, but honestly, I just think, a lot of it also has to do with us mentoring other people and coaching other people. And again, going back, like I said, we've all had different kinds of experiences, right? And some of them have not been pleasant. And so
Right. You
sharing
don't
those
have to mentor
experiences,
someone younger too. It can be,
right?
you know,
It could be
and a lot of these
anybody,
younger folks are getting into leadership and
right?
don't want to hire someone older than them. And it's like, oh my God, we've got such a shortage. And I know a lot of women who would like to come back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it shouldn't, yeah, the age thing shouldn't matter. Absolutely. But we also need to, like I said, share our story, like our experiences that we've had, so that someone can learn from that experience and be more equipped to handle when they have an experience. Because unfortunately, there are still things that are happening that shouldn't be happening.
Yes.
And the only way to find that out is to have some of those one-on-one conversations with somebody, you know, whether it's a young person that you're coaching or someone that's re-entering into a career or whatever, to really help them see, okay, you're not the only one dealing with this. Had this happen, you know, this is what
Right.
I did. This is what, you know,
Well,
we can.
yeah. And I mean, we are an industry of organizations.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do very much as a solopreneur or small, you know, small nonprofit or whatever. You know, it's really who you work for, who you're affiliated with, you know, and unfortunately, associations and association conferences can be a place for bad actors.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You know, that it's a good place to hide. There can often be alcohol flowing, good excuse to not watch your
Mhm.
behavior. And bullying, you know. I mean, I've talked about this, you know, when I started Water Citizen, I thought it would be a benefit to have someone with a PhD in engineering with all this inside knowledge who could also do media. Um, and yet, you know, there's those who just want to have media that just kind of write what's in the press release and not ask too many questions. I've had situations, and often even with staff and with officers, had one, you know, president of an association actually corner me at a meeting. I thought we were sitting down to do an interview, and he's demanding to know who's behind my organization, who's paying for it, and who's pulling the strings. You know, when I met you at the Water Workforce Symposium, right? And I had gotten up and walked over to where you were because I wanted to meet you as the incoming president. I was excited to meet you. And the session before that, there was a panel that had kind of left uh time for audience engagement. And typical water audience, everyone's sitting in the back of the room trying to, you know, manage their staff on their phones and everything. And so nobody was doing anything, and there was no one to run the mic. So I got up and I ran the mic just because
Yeah.
I've been a planner and that's something I do. And somebody complained. And someone on the staff, as I was walking back from meeting you back to my table, somebody came over and literally stood over me. I'm gonna show you. Like stood over
Wow.
me and said, "Are you gonna behave yourself?" And I said, "Excuse me." He goes, "Are you gonna behave yourself?" No idea what he was talking about. And I went back to my chair. I quietly sat and watched him try to run the mic, which is not an easy thing to do. You don't know how to do, but never got an apology, never got an acknowledgement. And these are the kinds of bullying.
Disrespect. That's disrespect.
Yes, yes. And it's so easy for these things to happen, you know, and I see people who had issues in large organizations who you know, were harassing women or not treating them well or whatever, who separated from those organizations, but they can hang their shingle, they can run for an office with an association, and suddenly they're testifying at Congress or invited to speak all over the place because they are a representative of that association. And there's no HR, there's no, you know, because all the sexual discrimination and harassment kind of stuff, that is under labor law. It assumes there's an employer and employee. And statements are good, fine, whatever. But if we're not prepared for what to do when bad things happen, I'm going to be talking with someone from a large utility that had a situation with sexual harassment and and retaliation when people spoke up, and it got into the newspaper. And the GM left, and a new GM came in, and it was like, oh no, the problem's taken care of. And the state did an audit and found a history of retaliation. I mean, we have to acknowledge that our utilities are a subset of society. Racism exists in society. Sexism exists in society. Just because most of the white people are not, overtly racist, most of the men are not predators, doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And we can't just assume that, I don't think he'd ever do that. I don't think that would ever happen. You don't see what's happening in those private places, and in these association meetings, it can be an easy place to hide behavior.
Yeah. So that's why it's so important to find somebody who could be your go-to person to be able, because if something does happen and you have no one to talk to about it, and it makes you feel really bad about that environment and everything, yeah, you're probably going to leave, right? But not tell anybody. You might, or you might, I don't know. There could be different ways that people might do that, but there's a chance that you lose somebody. You lose somebody that could be very valuable to the organization for the wrong reasons, and they don't want to. It's embarrassing. You might feel embarrassed, and so it's so important to be able to have those people that you can go to, or someone you can go to be able to talk about those things and find a way. You might not be able to solve the whole thing, but if more people would share with each other and work towards that, mutual respect, and really mutual learning, but mutual respect, I think the change can happen faster.
And I have every faith in this. I created Water System for people passionate about water. I love people in the water space. I see it at every race, gender, everything. When people are into water, they're really into water, and they really care so tremendously much. I do want to say, I know we got to wrap up soon, but I do want to say one of the things that I call that and published that right before this past WEFTEC, the big conference, 20,000 people, largest water conference in North America, is that they had an ombudsman. And it was the first time I'd ever seen that at any water conference. Somebody, a trained person in a room who was there. If something came up, you had someone to talk to. And I even interviewed her. It was pretty clear she wasn't going to do anything. It was kind of a place to kind of talk things through.
Mm-hmm.
But when I posted about that, the people who commented were men. It was men who were thanking me because they had been in situations where they had basically rescued women who were being,
mm-hmm.
Someone following them to the elevator and couldn't get rid of them. And then men would step in, and that's great if the men are there. But we need to make sure that we're not just relying on this general manager was ahead of their time, and this general manager really believed in that. We have to institutionalize. What do you do if something happens? How do you ensure there's no retaliation? How do we ensure that, that people can go and learn and connect and present and get into leadership and do all these amazing things you can do in associations?
Yeah.
And not be afraid of saying something because you might get retaliated against, or you might get labeled as one of those ball-busting feminists. I don't want to be a feminist. I want to be an engineer. God damn it. I want to run models and do multi-criterion decision analysis and build big projects. That's what I thought my career was going to be about, not doing a 50-person summit on women of water. But you know what? These things are not changing unless we actually get them out there, and unless we stop doing just celebrations and success stories and get real.
Right. And I do think that it is important to include men in that conversation, because there are a lot of really good men out there that have helped. I know I've had a lot of help from a lot of people of men that have mentored me, have supported me, and we need those men to help mentor others also, so that it continues to spread that way. But you're right, there's still a lot of work to do, a lot of change. There are still people out there that don't understand, but we've got to help
And even
people
women,
understand.
even
And there
women
does
who
have to be
don't.
some accountability in certain cases.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and so
Lots
it
of
is,
conversations
it's a lot
out
of
on
work.
this. Yes.
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
just need
yeah.
to, keep talking about it, but there does have to be more action too. Intentional,
Absolutely.
right? Intentional things that we do to help people. Because sometimes people really don't understand why we have to change something. So we have to explain that why. We do. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope that this summit can be a resource. I hope that the folks at WEF will share the information on the summit. We'll certainly let them know that you are a part of it, and thank you for being here. We can't just support studies, more and more studies that say, oh, look at these percentages. Let's go, focus on 7th grade girls. Let's go get women into college. It's like, let's actually address these issues. We are problem solvers in the water sector. That's what we do. Put the problems on the table. Let's understand it and put some systems in place that are going to help make sure that this is an industry that is welcoming and supportive and allows every single woman who comes in this industry to thrive and contribute at the highest levels.
Yep. Well, let's build that trust and respect.
Well, thank you so much for being here, for trusting us to be here. And for those of you in the audience, go ahead and type your stories. Let us know if there are any men who are watching. We want to know. We'll put the words on water on the page so people can hear a little more about what happened during those first months of COVID. And keep watching. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining us for this extraordinary conversation, one of 45 extraordinary conversations we had as part of the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we explored where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and even bring women back to water. I hope that you will enjoy all of these amazing interviews. If you don't have a chance to watch all of them during the summit, you have the opportunity to join us with a power pack and get lifetime access to all the videos, as well as an opportunity to join us for 30 days in a brand new community where we will dig even deeper in live facilitated conversations about some of the issues that are facing women in water. Look forward to seeing you there. Please join us at watercitizen.org/women, watercitizen.org/women for more information. See you again soon.